right, Kenny, tell us about our next guest. I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely thrilled that we have her on the show.
The next guest we have is Therese Sullivan, principal of BuildingContext.me. Therese, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Let's get this started.
Sure. Ken and Eric were asking me about why I started my blog, which is BuildingContext.me. And I started it a few months back because I recognized that there was an information void in the whole Internet of Things area. From where I sat, by 2013, the clean tech software industry was more or less declared a disaster by some of the investment community. There had been quite a number of people who had come from successful IT careers and attempted to launch a building technology product and were not making it into the market or being adopted past an initial few beta buildings, and then further rollouts weren't really happening. So the money was drying up, and I had a front row seat, and I saw a pattern. I worked for no less than 3 of this type of startup company, and the pattern I recognized was that, and I'll use, because it was me doing it too, is that we were very, from the startup standpoint, we were very big in getting into the digital dialogue, using social media, using the internet, getting people speaking engagements. And so we were throwing out a lot of ideas into the marketplace and maybe we weren't listening hard enough, but we weren't hearing much coming back. Sometimes I compared it to Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka, where it was like, no, stop, don't. But not like we would just keep throwing money at this until we self-destructed in the effort. And then I met Ken Sinclair through some of my PR jobs, actually at two different times in conferences. I met Ken Sinclair, and as the years rolled on, I would say, well, you really have to read in Automated Buildings what Ken said, and you really have to read this dialogue. You know, I print everything out and bring it back to product development, the kind of things people were talking about at the Automated Buildings site and on LinkedIn in Ken's discussion groups, because I could tell that's really where the digital dialogue was going on. So basically, I launched BuildingContext.me because I wanted to be a part of that. I thought where the action was, where really the people that understood buildings the best were having their discussions. And I recognized that that this is going to keep continuing. The solutions from IT, from enterprise computing, from telecom, that they're going to keep sending new products into the buildings world, and it's up to us as a community to embrace the best of them in the interest of progress, but deflect most of the others, because that's really maybe why I felt like this Willy Wonka personality. Buildings has the first charter, which is to keep the lights on, to keep the heat running, and sometimes these solutions that are coming from IT, from telecom, they don't have that first charter, a solid enough understanding of that first charter.
You have an amazing background, and you mentioned so many good things and things we could discuss, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you know so much about buildings and how you got starting to write about it and become a strong voice within the industries.
Sure. So as I said, the people with IT careers, and I'll have to admit I am a person with an IT career before I came into buildings, but long about 2007, the same year that Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, I was busy introducing the first commercial net zero energy office building here in the Bay Area. Wow. And I was working with quite an inspiring project team that hired me to do the public relations, communications, manage the press. And this team included Peter Rumsey, who is a very well-known Rocky Mountain Institute fellow, mechanical engineer, Scott Schell of EHDD Architecture, and David Kaneda, who did the electrical design, his company, and the lighting design, daylighting design. And that team, that project team, which is multiple companies like building project teams are, have now completed about 14 very high-profile net zero energy projects. So working with them, I really got to see the future. And they were very inspiring, and I would have to say that they felt like this was one of the most important missions you can have, is to make better buildings, especially make more energy efficient buildings. And I was hooked, and I really wanted to spend more of my career there. And I was quickly absorbed, based on that background, into several startups doing energy efficiency management software that were based here in the Valley. And I should say that before I got, the reason that particular project team hired me was because I had a background that included about 5 years each in 3 different industries that contribute to buildings. One was electronics computer-aided design. Today it would be called the software for systems on a chip, how you design systems on a chip. I spent about 5 years with Mentor Graphics. I lived in Chicago for a while. I spent about 5 years with a company doing virtualization software for the enterprise, very tightly integrated with the IBM world. And I spent about 5 years in PC security software.
Wow, Therese. So, you guys, this is why we like to read Therese's blog. She has such a breadth of information and an experience. Therese, I don't think anybody can sort of put it together the way that you do. And I'm just so impressed with your background, and we're so impressed with your blog. Speak a bit, if you will, about your latest post that you have up and how you combine these technologies together and to sort of give you the perspective that you bring to the table.
Right. So the last post I wrote, which was just put up at automatedbuildings.com, and it's about M2M networking by the telecom companies, how the telecom companies, specifically cellular, are coming into the buildings area attempting to sell their networking services. And all the things I just talked about come into play. First, the fact that there's about 3 of these M2M networking companies within a 10-mile radius of my house. That they're relatively new companies, but there are a lot of buzz about Jasper Wireless and Xeris. There's a couple others. And so I knew that was the buzz. We also have Splunk, the visualization presentation company based in Cupertino. We have Okana, which is doing specifically security for M2M. Now, those companies really are quite aware of what the telecom companies are doing, less aware of what the buildings industry is doing, except for Splunk is great. Splunk has got Brian Gilmore from McKinney's.
McKinney's, yeah, we know Brian.
Yeah, now working with Splunk. So, I see the listening is getting much better on these technology companies. I think they learned their lesson from earlier failures of just launching products without really, really trying to understand this world. But those companies, again, are right within my radius here. And I get also, and I think this is most important, why they're all trying to build development communities. And I would say that comes a lot from my background in system on a chip design, that all these networking companies, they need to get to the people they feel are their development communities, their ecosystems, as early in the design process as they can. So that when you say, oh, I could solve that problem and I could solve it with a system on a chip, and I will, the type of networking you're going to put in as circuitry in that chip. So you have to be aware of what their strengths are way up front in the design process. So they're very concerned with...
Well, Therese, let me interrupt you real quick. So okay. I guess one of the questions I have to ask you, because you've seen sort of the building automation and the smart buildings and everything from multiple perspectives. What, I think we as an industry tend to, I'm talking about from the HVAC side, tend to be fairly maybe slow to react. I mean, is it fair to say that others from outside the conventional HVAC systems integration business might be coming into our industry? And what advice would you give the traditional manufacturers in our industry and systems integrators? I mean, what do you think they need to know? And I'm sort of a broad question, but what comes to my mind is that statement, you should be very, very afraid if you're not sort of moving and embracing these new technologies. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know if I think that they're kind of in the catbird seat. I think that these companies are coming to them. I really don't think that networking without that hands-on understanding of the building is going to get you very far. It's going to get the customer very unhappy, and they'll just, especially the way they're selling this, it comes out in the story, they're selling it as data subscriptions. So it would be as easy as changing your router if you didn't like, whether you chose between
one provider,
Verizon partners, yes,
yeah,
et cetera. But because they really need to build an ecosystem around them, and it's system integrators that need to start thinking like this.
Bingo.
They need to change their thinking, but I don't see it so much as a threat as I see it as a opportunity.
Yeah.
If I may just go back to something you mentioned earlier about the we are working on a trend, the master systems integrators, and I think that we're also trying to make sure that we're gathering the right information for the people in our industry. We work with systems integrators every day, and I was very glad to hear you say that wasn't necessarily a menace, because in one of your articles it says, are these technologies coming into the ones that were in utilities, transportation, automotive, and consumer electronics, are they coming into building automation? And we know that the answer is yes. But it sounds to me like if people are evolving quickly in our industry, and our master systems integrators get it, and our people that provide us our software frameworks that make us allow us to do the integration, that this is a really great time to transition and work closely with these people. How can we best facilitate that? You were talking about social media before, and so what is the best thing to do? We could build up a social media network that can help introduce all the players, the ecosystem players, and give them ideas on how to best move forward.
Yeah, I think there's heroes. Like I had one category that I had on my blog were my content heroes, and early on, before Brian Gilmore was hired by Splunk, I recognized, whoa, this Brian Gilmore is cool. he can go to it was Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, but was a big McKinney's customer, and he can see what they're doing in IT, and he wasn't threatened by IT. He said, oh, I could use that over here. He put two and two together. And I think elevating people like that, and then I wasn't the only, I had nothing to do with him being hired into Splunk, but I guess I could have predicted it.
Nice.
And I think that those kind of people, just by giving them opportunity to talk about among their peers about what they're thinking about, that we would be doing them a great service. And I guess that's what I think is there. I think
this is brilliant. You just did a brilliant recruiting proposal there. That's what we'll do. We'll get these guys to come and talk about their ideas and their expertises, and make them more, give them a better opportunity to network and help those ecosystems grow.
Right. Because then Splunk hires Brian Gilmore. Brian Gilmore is walking around with he's in Atlanta, he's in Cupertino, he's been quite elevated.
Yes.
And it was because he was a master system integrator that walked over to IT and said, oh, I could use that, and I'll use it in a different way, but I'm in control. It didn't come in and like wash him over. He just saw it as another tool he could apply.
Makes
and
sense.
I think that's all they have. They have these M2M networking people. I mean, they've got a network, but they're not close to the building. They can't open and close the valves.
Well, we're talking to Therese Sullivan. Therese, tell our listeners a little bit. Do you have anything coming up lately on the blog that you want to tell us about real quick? And tell us a little bit more about the blog. Give us the website so our viewers can track you. Ken and I go there on a regular basis. We're big Therese Sullivan fans, and you should be too. So what you got cooking on the blog this week, for example?
Well, I'm going to look at it the other way. I talked last week about, and it's the home automation as an analogy is something fun to look at. Just if you're turning on your TV, you're probably seeing a lot of Xfinity where you can get your home automation from your telecom company or from your cable company, or you could have your own the more home automation from your security company. And I think the same thing's happening in buildings. And the story I just wrote in February was about, okay, the telecom companies want to come in and sell you as a data plan their M2M networking services. Well, there's a certain number of, because this is a huge market, of the market that's going to want to own their own network. They're not going to want to rent it from Verizon. They're going to want to have an enterprise-owned network. And if a good example would be when I go to the healthcare facility around here. I have 2 kids, so I'm in there once in a while, and they will have their own network. The people running the medical office, they want to keep the people in the waiting room happy, so they try to provide great internet service, which isn't coming from the cellular carrier. It's an enterprise-owned network, and it'll come up, this medical foundation, blah, blah, sign on, that sort of thing where the enterprise owns the network. That would be the next thing I want to write about, because that's sort of the yin to the yang. You can rent it from Verizon, or if you're a big campus or big building, there's also advantages to having an enterprise-owned network.
That is a fascinating trend. I think you might be calling that one big time. The other one I want to ask you, we were talking about home automation, and it was actually at Ken Sinclair's event. There was a guy from the automated demand response and talking about security, and he was saying that, people are not really paying attention so much to the home automation and the home security, but Therese, he was saying that some people have actually hacked in through the HVAC control system and turned like the regular security system off. I mean, are you tracking those trends at all? Do you see that as an issue?
Well, again, having done my years in PC security, there's always a yin and a yang to that too. That yes, the vulnerabilities that are out there, as we're adding new technologies, we just become more vulnerable. As we make more internet access points available in our buildings when we do the energy retrofits, and more things with cloud applications, there will be more internet access points. That makes the building more vulnerable. But then you have products like LinkSpring,
yes,
that go around and check, is there any internet access point, I'll call it, but open internet point that can be closed, that isn't needed right now, and it shuts those extra points down, which I think is really smart. So you can't shut it all down. I am watching it, but I think the buildings industry is doing the right thing. There's going to continue to be more cloud applications. With that comes more vulnerability, and you have to take necessary precautions.
Teresa, we have a question I've been dying to ask. I think you gave us partial answers before, but when Google bought Nest for an extraordinary sum of money, and it kind of really completed a circle that Eric and I had followed for about a year with the way the thermostats were the disruptive technology that were leading to a massive signing up of the smart devices inside residences and light commercial buildings to get them onto the grid, aggregate that information, and then make a measurable impact to the grid. Like supposedly LinkSpring Connex helped to prevent a brownout in Texas during that last cold spell. I don't know if you read about that, but that was a very interesting thing where they've actually given a positive report back on OpenADR. But what was Google doing buying Nest for that tremendous sum of money?
Well, everybody's got their own crystal ball on it, but what I saw was that they really wanted Tony Fadell,
yeah,
because they perceived as he was trained by Steve Jobs to be a great product manager. So it was, they are getting into more hardware products, though now this week they just sold the Motorola division. But it still makes sense that it's still in the mobile operating system space. It's still very much Apple has the premium users. Android has bigger market share, but they're not perceived as premium as Apple is. And the next generation, these mobile operating systems that are running on your tablets and running on your phones are going to be context, and that's pretty well-known fact too, that the next one is going to be a contextual operating system, and it's going to be more aware of the environment that the phone is in. And so it's going to be able to put feelers out and come back and present to you underneath that piece of glass what your environment is. And so I saw very much that Google needed to make this contextual operating system. They had to have what Nest was doing in home automation, that it was a qualifying event for what's really coming 2 or 3 years down the road, which is the next turn of the operating systems, where they're very, very head-to-head, iOS and Android.
Oh my goodness!
Great answer. Great answer. And, one thing, Teresa, is that I get excited when I hear about like the next new trends coming in that's going to impact our industry. But I think what you said kind of took me a little bit by surprise was how the building management folks, the master systems integrators, actually have a lot of they're not vulnerable. And I think we could help control that message better, that they're actually in a position of advantage, that they need to take advantage of it before they lose that. In other words, we have a lot of people, like Eric said, they're very reluctant to get involved in IT security because it's one more big headache. And I mean, they have incredible knowledge of equipment, systems, integration. They started out as technicians, many of them. Then they spent a lot of off-duty time learning their own IT, and then they went to school again, learned some business and marketing. So it's like a homegrown. There is no university of integration. It's like a repository of experiences, like almost like what you have. You have an integration of an incredible career. Well, these guys have done it in the HVAC world, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning world, and then building automation. And a lot of them are very concerned. A lot of them are they don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we can't get anybody into the industry. We don't have any next generation people coming up in our industry that are learning kind of a preparatory career anymore. It's like you're either IT or you go to a branch and you learn Johnson's version of automation, or you go to Honeywell's schools in engineering and you learn that. But we don't have anything that's
like in California at least, and I'm sure the same is around the city of Chicago too, is that the community colleges are, and some of it's been through the green movement. Like again, when I was working for these startups that wanted to get all the lighting for California community colleges, so they wanted to be the wireless lighting control system for California community colleges, and I got to go down and interview the facilities guy, and he was one of these guys. He was like black belt karate, had been in numerous community colleges. He knew these technologies so well. He could have teach, and they were starting to ask him to teach the classes when it came to sustainability and running a building. But I think the community college system is starting to train these kind of people, and in this case, there was a lot of respect for the guy that was doing it right there, and that's what I got to write up a little success story on him and our lighting. And
in our area, our geographical area right now, it's like mercantilism. You can't get anybody qualified as an AX certified integrator unless you take them from another business. All these guys that are coming out of these community college schools, they're probably getting good technicians positions, but they're not really moving up any kind of a continuous elevating educational platform that takes them into the AX certification, where you have to go down to Tritium for a week and take it's almost like Microsoft or Cisco certification. But so if you have that out in California, we'd love to know a little bit more about that. I've never heard it. I guess Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't you say the benchmark standard for integration is AX?
Yeah, I would think so. And what I hear you saying, Kenny, is that this is very encouraging. Teresa, your message I think is extremely encouraging. to people in our industry that might not have the same perspective you do. So you might have sort of become the Joan of Arc for encouraging people to get back in our industry a little bit. So very encouraging what you had to say.
I think what you said was very inspiring. I think Eric came up with a great thing. We'll call you the Joan of Arc of information because we don't have that information. In other words, I'm taking notes here because I'm going to write an article as soon as I can get done with this about how to, send more. Our industry can't attract young talent, and you say community colleges. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, and there's somebody that keeps contacting. I read it in Ken's discussion groups on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. But so that's the community college. Like the community college I was just talking about was Southern California, mm-hmm. But then there's a professor from the community college outside in Davis, I believe, that's always asking Ken Sinclair for ideas for his classwork.
Right, but that's so probably more of a rarity than a norm, So
yeah, and so he's right outside Berkeley, and Berkeley, Lawrence Livermore Labs. They're very very much a hotbed.
Sure, yeah.
For this kind of thinking, and so certainly the community college surrounding are saying, we need these kind of people, and all the hype about Internet of Things, and it's not going to get you very far unless you can get the physical world involved, and it's this building system integrators that really understand the physical world and what's really going to happen.
No. Well said, Therese. Well said.
We're going to quote you on that one. That's going to be the opening. I'm teasing you.
But okay, Therese, thank you so much for being on Control Talk. Now, this is Therese Sullivan from BuildingContext.me. It's the site where Ken Smyers, the man, the myth, the legend, and I go to get the information. That's why we sound so smart. Be sure to check out Therese's site. Therese, thanks so much for being on the show.
Sure. It was great. Thank you for having me. Great fun.
All right. Thanks, Therese.